Hi everyone, I'm Tina. Welcome back to my channel. Today I want to answer one of the most baffling questions to a lot of second language learners, which is how can I enhance my reading efficiency? If you're interested, please keep on watching.
本视频由丸子进步工作室独家赞助播出哦。
Have you ever calculated your reading speed? If you don't know what your reading speed is, you can go online. Last night I tried out this website called myreadspeed.com to calculate how many words you can consume per minute. So for me last time, I did 2 reading tests. One, I read for an analytical purpose. My speed is 293 WPM. The second time I read it for entertainment, I read it for fun, and my reading speed was 448 WPM. So as we know, our screen reading speed and our paper reading speed is different, right? With paper, slightly faster than screen. So here in the table, you will see the relevant reader profile and the speed at which they read. So basically, an average reader will read about 200 words to 240 words per minute, either on screen or on paper. But a good reader can read from 300 up to 400 words per minute, either on screen or paper. But of course, this reading test applies to native speakers. Like us, we are second language learners, right? So the table may be slightly demanding for us. But if you want to see yourself as a near native speaker, or you want to elevate your English to a point that you can operate like a native, then definitely the table is a good reference. The first thing to know is, why can you not read fast? Basically, there are 2 main reasons. First one is concentration or motivation. If you simply can't concentrate on what you're reading, you have to reread the text several times, and this would greatly undermine your reading efficiency. The second factor is literacy, and this has to do with either language or topic or both. For example, if there's so many new words in a text, how can you read fast, right? Or if the topic is something that you're not so familiar with, you can't understand text very well in a short time either. Imagine reading in your mother tongue, which is, I guess, for most of us, Chinese, right? For example, you're reading something about the viral infection of somebody's liver. So even though my mother tongue is Chinese, I can't really understand the text very well because the subject matter is simply too abstruse to me. By comparison, if I'm reading a leisure book, say a fiction in Chinese, I can read very fast. So the same goes to English reading. If you're reading something which you're very familiar with, you can naturally read faster than something you're completely foreign to. So at this stage, you should probably realize that choosing the right text is important to enhance your reading speed. So then it begs the question of, how can I choose the right text? What are some guidelines? Well, this is the second thing that we should know. In general, we divide reading into 3 different levels. The highest level is called independent reading, which means readers can perfectly understand the text on your own, and they can read with ease, and reading can boost their confidence. At this stage, the word recognition level is well above 95%, and your comprehension accuracy is also above 95, or just hover around 95%. The second level is called instructional level, which means without a teacher or without external help, it might be somewhat difficult for you to comprehend the text fully. So for this stage, the word recognition level is around 90 to 94%, and the comprehension accuracy is between 80 to 90%. So this type of text usually involves some concepts or terminologies or subject matters that are not so familiar to us. The bottom level is what we call the frustration level, which means without a teacher or without help, it's extremely difficult for you to understand the whole text. So at this level, the word recognition percentage is under 90%, and the comprehension accuracy rate is below 80%. And if you do read on your own at this level, then you will find yourself preoccupied with decoding the meaning of the text. So reading is actually quite demanding in a sense that you do need to know the words pretty well. And also the subject matter should be somewhat within your existing cognitive world. The last concept that's in the way is the purposes of reading. And scholars have divided them into 4 different kinds. The first one is called elementary reading, which means you simply read to get some basic information, right? It's something that we do at primary school, just to read to understand what the text is about. The second one is called inspectional reading. So you read to find out some key information, right? Maybe you're looking for a phone number, or maybe you're looking for a piece of evidence, right? Or you could read to see if the text is worth your time. The third kind is analytical reading, and this typically applies to our academic study. You're trying to answer some comprehension questions, and when you do that, you have to be analytical. You have to analyze the writer's point of view, his attitude, and so on. The last type, the most difficult and demanding type, is called syntopical reading, which is also called comparative reading. So you will read multiple texts at the same time, and you have to compare them. So maybe you're looking at the common themes, or looking at the common attributes or attitudes of the writer. So you may wonder why I keep rambling about these dry stuff. They are dry, but they're important to our understanding of when we can apply speed reading. It's not like we can speed read every single time. In our daily lives, we usually do either inspectional reading, like reading a nice fiction, or analytical reading, which is, you're preparing for your academic test, or you're sitting for an academic exam. So in these two categories, we can appropriately use speed reading strategies to help us to get more information within a limited time, or to finish a book faster. All this is done under the condition that you still comprehend the text. We don't want to read or finish a book without really understanding what's happened. We still want to know what's going on, and we still want to retain information. So in the following part, I'll share with you some strategies that you can use in either reading for leisure or reading for an academic purpose. Let's start with reading for leisure. How can you finish this, thick book in a shorter time? So remember a while ago, I mentioned that there are two factors blocking our reading speed, right? One is concentration, and the other is literacy. So when you're reading a leisure book, you have to make sure the subject matter is not something that's too distant to you. For example, this book, Dan Brown's Inferno, I would say this one is of a considerable difficulty level because it has to deal with a lot of art knowledge and history knowledge. So if you are just at a secondary level, then reading this book will be quite difficult to you, not just because of the words, but because of the subject matter, the knowledge in it. So it's important that you choose a book that's right to you. The second thing is concentration. To finish a book faster, you need to minimize the time wasted on catching up with what you have read before or staying focused. So here I want to share with you one very effective strategy, which is to combine the audio and the visual senses. If possible, you can try listening to the book as you are reading it. This way, if you have a guided voice to guide you through reading, you will find that it's much easier for you to comprehend and concentrate. The second strategy, which seems to be at odds with the first one, is limiting or undoing the subvocalization as you read. Do you find that when you're reading, there is this inner voice in your mind that's reading out loud what you're reading? This will greatly impair your reading efficiency. So now you may wonder, is this at odds with what you just said? We should listen and read, and now we shouldn't read out loud text? It is not, because when you're listening to an external audiobook, you are guided by the external voice, which is set at a certain pace. But when you read it, when you subvocalize it on your own, you are guided by your own voice, and your own voice may drag you down. So try not to subvocalize as you read the text. When you're reading a Chinese text, you will find that you're not subvocalizing so much as opposed to when you're reading an English book. That's because when we subvocalize, we are assisting our comprehension. But that's not necessarily true. We don't really need to vocalize a passage so as to understand what it means. So what are some strategies to suppress subvocalization as you read? First, you can try listening to some soft music or light music as you read. This is because the music would naturally limit the chance that you'll vocalize the passage in your mind. The second strategy you can try, which is a bit silly though, is that you can try to make some repetitive or monotonous sound. For example, tapping your finger on a table, because it creates a kind of rhythm, and your mind will be preoccupied with the rhythm rather than be engaged in subvocalizing it. But of course, these are not long-term strategies. The reason why we're using these is because we can get our mind into a habit of not voicing out the text as we read. The third strategy to speed reading is avoid checking the dictionary when you encounter new words. Well, this also has to do with choosing the right text in the first place. As I said, for the independent reading level, the word recognition percentage should be well above 95%. So before you purchase a book, please do make sure you do enough research to see if the book is suitable to your own level. This can reduce the frustration that you experience as you read, because if you always read at a frustration level, then very soon you will lose interest in reading, and in the future you may not read anymore, which in turn will further worsen your English proficiency. Now let's move on to analytical reading for an academic or assessment purpose. So in this kind of reading, what you need to do is not reading too fast, but reading with a high level of comprehension and trying your best to retain information. So if you're dealing with this type of reading, the following two strategies will be very useful, not only for enhancing the reading speed, but also for retaining information. The first strategy is something that I always apply in not just reading, but also writing, which is to understand the structure of the passage you're dealing with. A lot of times, people will simply start reading without understanding the overall structure of the text. This could affect your overall comprehension ability because you're not seeing it as a whole. So when I read an academic text, the first thing I do is to see its whole structure. I will simply flip through the pages that I have to read and to see how it is structured. What is the underlying logic? This way, I would know exactly where I am as I read. So this will enhance my overall understanding. You could also apply the skill when you're reading an IELTS text, because a lot of times the passages in IELTS or TOEFL or GRE are academic in nature. So they should follow a clear logical flow. And if you can figure out the underlying logic of the passage, it will greatly assist your understanding. So how do you do that? If a text has subheadings, of course it's easy. If a text doesn't have subheadings, then you should read the first sentence. I know it sounds like cliche, right? Read the first sentence, the last sentence, but it makes sense because all kinds of academic texts follow a similar pattern. That's how people are taught to write these texts. So you have to trust the system that usually people will start their paragraph with a topic sentence. You should trust it. When I was a student, I always like to scribble as I read. I find it very easy for me to concentrate in that way. So I just use 1-2 keywords to note down the key idea of the paragraph or of the section. This way, it's easier for me to follow what I have read and to connect it to the later parts that I have to read and see their inner connections. Another thing you can do is mind mapping. So as you read, especially for IELTS, right? Sometimes it has to deal with a lot of scholars giving different opinions or dealing with something's development in different time periods. So if that's the case, I will actually draw a timeline on just a random paper, right? A rough paper. Or I will use circles or Venn diagrams to signal the relationship of different people or different people's beliefs. The good thing about scribbling as you read is not only that it can help you to stay focused as you read, but also it can reduce the time for you to revisit the parts that you have read before, which is very time consuming. Today, I've told you 4 effective strategies to enhance your leisure reading and academic reading. For leisure reading, you can try combining the audiobook with the visual book. Also, to limit or suppress your sub-vocalization by listening to some soft music or by listening to a monotonous pattern of rhythm. If you want to enhance your analytical reading for academics or assessment, then first of all, you should try to understand the global structure of the text. It's always very important to know what's happening in the whole essay. Second, try scribbling to help you enhance your understanding by noting down what you have read in that paragraph and summarizing it in 1 to 2 words. I hope you found the video useful today, and I hope you can immediately try implementing these strategies in your reading and see if magic can happen. See you next time. Bye!